I'm Matt Jennings, lecturer in drama at Edge Hill University in England, but my family is still based in Northern Ireland, and I'm originally from Australia, but I've been working in applied drama as a facilitator, writer, director, musician in Northern Ireland and the surrounding border regions of the Republic for 10 years, 10 to 12 years. I went away and came back again. And I'd just done a PhD on community drama in Northern Ireland as an aspect of conflict transformation.
Okay. So can you, what interested you in to work in the field of community art? Was there a passion for people? Was it a passion for theatre itself? What led you to that path?
My initial passion was for theatre making. In Sydney, I studied performance and theatre making, and I did a lot of theatre making. I was always more drawn to socially engaged theatre, but I didn't find there were as many opportunities in community arts per se as the funded participatory arts as I found when I got to Northern Ireland. We would be socially engaged, we would be inclusive of people who didn't have much experience. We would also be inclusive of people who were professionally trained in Sydney in the 90s, late 90s particularly, after a Conservative government cut most of the arts funding, without having a conscious label of community arts because it wasn't a funding category. You just did what you were doing because you felt like you wanted to do art. And then when I got to Northern Ireland, I found that there was a lot of work called community arts, and I was also always politically interested in the idea of transforming conflict, and so I happened to move there because of my wife being local and started to get more work in that area in Derry in Northern Ireland, and found it was tremendously rewarding. The way I put it in conversation once with a friend of mine was it's far more, it feels far more worthwhile to be helping to make a real difference in people's lives using your drama skills than to be sitting in the waiting room of a casting agent trying to beat the male models for the bubblegum commercial, And so a lot of my experience in Sydney was, although we did politically engaged and inclusive art and everything, most of the time you felt like you were trying to make it in a very limited professional acting scene, whereas in Northern Ireland I've worked with people with learning disabilities, older people, young people, people with mental health issues, as well as conflict transformation and developing communication skills, particularly with people with learning disabilities. I've found it to be very sort of emotionally powerful to sort of work with somebody who's got autism spectrum disorder and has never spoken in 30 years of their life, although they understand and will respond to verbal instruction. And then in the course of drama workshops, simply by not accepting that this is the limit of this person's capabilities and doing one's best to include them in the activities everybody else is doing, getting to the point where after sort of a year and a half, this man speaks, points at somebody, makes eye contact and says their name, which, when he first joined the group at the age of 30, we were told just would not happen. And when things like that happen, it makes you realise the power of what we're doing. And as I said in the discussion, whether or not this is actually not just a matter of whether it's a social tool or whether it's some form of social engineering or whether or not it should be art for art's sake or something that's pure in its moment of aesthetic reflection. But if it's actually a physical need, it's something that we need to do. We kids learn through play. The Schechner's performance studies, Piaget, kids learn through play, drama and performance are part of the way we exist in everyday life. Irving Goffman, and when you sort of see the physical responses of people from drama participation, like when you work with older people, people whose mobility is supposedly impaired, and somebody who's a care worker will say they'll never lift their arms above their head. But then when you engage in creative play, arms are going up over people's heads all over the place and jaws are dropping on care staff, and it's like this, without engaging their imaginations, they couldn't lift their arms above their head. But as soon as their imaginations are engaged, their physical capacity is increased. And like that's far more than whether or not we can measure a social impact or whether or not we can call it a beautiful piece of art. This is people coming to life. This is a necessary biological process. Arts participation's, something that engages with the whole phenomenology of being in a way that is physiological and psychological and social and political and everything. And I'm increasingly coming to the idea that it's the most necessary work in any field.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys, community artists, there's nobody more important in the world than community artists. Thankfully, most of us are a bit more humble than that. But I think, like you look at schooling, education system in the UK, increasingly moving towards an understanding of the necessity of play-based learning, particularly in early years programs. And the play-based, but play with structure, not just sort of freestyle. I had some educational drama students at Edge Hill recently who did a placement in an early years educational setting, and they decided to try to introduce structured play rather than free play as an element of bringing in drama, to bring in structured drama activities. And their area of investigation was whether or not they could exceed the expected outcomes for 3-year-olds by working through structured drama, rather than just allowing free play of the resources. And after their engagement and the measuring, the outcomes in terms of what the students managed to do while engaging in structured dramatic play, exceeded the expectations of the early years framework for 5-year-olds. So by doing drama for about 4 or 5 weeks, these kids ended up 2 years ahead of what, for want of a better term, might be called the curriculum. They were able to maintain a verbal engagement with telling a story for longer than was expected. They were able to sort of see things from another person's point of view. Their engagement with physical objects was more engaged and focused. And, like that kind of capacity, that for me is the power of drama per se, and the fact that it is how we make our lives. I mean, drama, I think, I'm not a classic scholar, but I think drama comes from Greek for to do, and acting is doing, and every action is an act, and I think that's where it really engages, and that's where I think it's interesting.